a mind escape. Are you ready?
Are you ready to escape your mind?
All right, folks, welcome back to Mind Escape. I am your host, Mike. This is episode number 312. I am going to be discussing the science versus the pseudoscience stuff. I mentioned on the last episode I kind of gave a current appraisal of my thoughts and philosophies on the mystery topics, life, consciousness, ancient mysteries, psychedelics, that kind of stuff. But lately there's been a lot of dialogue online, specifically Twitter. Today, the last 2 days, there's been a lot of continuation of the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble debate. I made a X post, giving my thoughts on it. So what Graham Hancock did was, there's this other YouTuber named Dan. I guess he runs a YouTube channel called Debunking, and he made a video about the ice cores that Flint Dibble was talking about in the debate, and how that's why we know that there's no ancient advanced civilizations, because we could tell that there would be metallurgy from the ice cores. Dan debunking, saying that, those tests were never run. However, I think there's been a lot of cores taken, from what I understand, and there would be knowledge. And, there's a lot of back and forth. So what Graham Hancock did was he posted this guy's video, and when he did so, he kind of kicked the hornet's nest and then walked away. So Hancock puts this thing out saying he was conned by Flint, and then Flint responds, no, here's the evidence and whatever. And the debunking Dan guy kept going on back and forth between Flint, and it became this long, huge thread where basically versus pseudo scientists, pseudo archaeologists versus real archaeologists. I don't know how they thought they were going to come out on top of that, but so I wanted to talk about that because this is something that's been weighing heavy on my mind lately, this idea that because of the internet, because of content creators and influencers and the momentum of things, I think we keep taking these detours and we're doing ourselves disservice. Now, when I say that, I'm going to bring... a lot of I'm calling this episode Graham Hancock, Terrence Howard, and Billy Carson, oh my, because a lot of this actually goes back to the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Now, I listen to Joe Rogan. I like more of his science stuff and, some of his funnier episodes, stuff like that. But lately, he went on a string of, and I'll look up all the episodes here, but he went on a string of having... After the Graham Hancock and Flint Dibble debate, he went on the string of having all sorts of wacky theories and theorists and stuff on his show. And I'm not telling people what to do. It's his show. It's his content. However, you do, in my opinion, you are the largest show. So you do have some level of responsibility. It's way bigger than the news, so let's see here. When did he have the debate? The debate was here. Let me see here. Okay, so he had the Graham Hancock and Flint Dibble debate, which I did a whole review on here with my buddy Ian. And then since then he had this moon landing guy I thought that was one of the least impressive ones. Let me pull up. I just want to get a list of all these real quick before I start running. But yeah, so this stuff's been weighing on my mind. As I mentioned on the last show, I have a young son. I don't want him living in a world where people just believe anything because so-and-so made a video about it. So, all right, so you had the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble debate. That was April 16th. Then he has on, the guy's name's Bart Sibrel. And again, tons, like he should have had on, since that was about the moon landing, he should have had somebody that knew about the moon landing to at least have a debate back and forth. Chris Dunn, he should have had an expert on the pyramids, to go against this guy. I mean, the thing that the pseudoscience stuff that's interesting is whenever you have somebody that, like a Chris Dunn, who is an engineer or runs a lathe or whatever, all the engineers and the lathe workers come out of the woodwork. Oh, I know so much more than, like it's just because like that's somebody's techne. They think they know all about it. I've never seen so many lathe workers and engineers come out of the woodwork in my life. But that being said, you've got that. Let's see what else we've got here. Of course, Terrence Howard, which I don't understand that one. I don't know how anybody can listen to that episode and think that anything that dude said was right, scientific. And then Billy Carson, too. If you don't know who Billy Carson is, he claims to be an expert on the Anunnaki. He's all about aliens and, ancient Sumerian texts and things like that. He claims to have, done his own translations of the Sumerian texts. So, yeah, so, a lot of these guys are big on YouTube, and they all do these other shows. You'll see them on like Theo Vaughn or Andrew Schultz's show. One guy does one show, they start doing all the shows. So again, I thought at one point Rogan mentioned, he's like, if I'm going to have somebody crazy on, I'm also going to have somebody there to debate them, which, I mean, the only debate that we've seen is the Graham Hancock Flint Dibble. We saw how that went. So, I'm just kind of at a loss for words because online and maybe it's just the people online. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the problem is me looking online. But the amount of people that back up this nonsense, and it is nonsense because there's no evidence. Like, we can have fun. We can speculate, theorize. The second you step out and you start to want to debate people and have a serious conversation about it, like Graham Hancock has nobody to blame but himself. He's been saying for years, oh, archaeologists don't like me, they don't want to debate me, blah, 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 blah. He finally does a debate, gets smoked, and then he basically says himself, I have no physical evidence, I don't have anything to provide on my end of things. So I kind of, at one point I'm like, do I feel bad? I feel bad that he maybe put himself in that, but like, it comes to the point where it's like, own up to your mistakes. And if you really believe, so his argument is that 99% of the Sahara and 99% of the Amazon have yet to be excavated. If you really believe that there's something there, put your money where your mouth is. Graham Hancock's got money at this point. He can fund an excavation. He can fund a trip, He claims to travel, he travels to all these places. Like, yeah, travel to the places, but you think you know more than the people that are actually digging in the dirt, working at these sites? Like, that, come on. That's just ridiculous. And as I mentioned on the last show, I've been seduced by this. This is how I got into this stuff like 7 years ago. And again, I think while I thought Rogan did an excellent job moderating the Flint Dibble Graham Hancock debate, I thought he did an excellent job making sure Flint got his points across. He did a great job, letting Graham speak and offer his insights on things. But he then has, some wackier people on after and doesn't have any pushback. And the problem I have, it's like one thing to have Terrence Howard on, let him speak his mind, whatever, have the conversation. But then to say the five or six episodes after that, to then say he's a genius and keep repeating that he's a genius is kind of insane to me. Like, no, he's not. He doesn't even believe, he thinks 1 × 1 is 2. Like, And if you don't understand why that's the case, you can look it up. It's pretty simple in terms of grouping and math logic. But so his premise. So another thing, he mentions in that interview, the Terrence Howard interview, he mentions that Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm sorry, gave him notes like, I don't know how many years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And then didn't want to talk to him again after they were having a back and forth, because Neil's like, your initial premise is wrong. I like the artwork, blah, blah, blah. And he made a video. I'll try and add the video when I'm done of Neil deGrasse Tyson. It seemed like he liked the fact that Terrence was like into science, but he thought that Terrence's theory of reinventing physics is, not right. So if that's the case, then, you don't have to like everybody. They can still be right, kind of a thing. Like, I know a lot of people don't like Neil. That's fine. That doesn't mean he's wrong. So he gave him notes and all that. But again, if you believe Terrence Howard's right, like, I don't know what to say. Like, have you passed basic math and basic science? Like, we do have anomalies, the marrying quantum physics and classical physics. There are still things out there that we don't know. What's dark matter is, now they're talking about, is there even dark matter? Is it a miscalculation? And so it's just one of those things. I'm like, not trying to offend anybody, but it's getting to the point where when I look online, I'm starting to feel nervous. I feel like we're heading towards Idiocracy, the movie. Have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy? I feel like at some point, everybody's going to adopt Terryology over the current paradigm, and then we're going to go backwards. Like, it's just making me nervous. So I thought I'd do an episode on this topic. Again, I'm not trying to like put anybody down. I think it's one thing to have a conversation, have fun, speculate, whatever. You start debating people, you start coming at people, different story. Then you open yourself up to critique, criticism, all that kind of stuff. And I have these two gentlemen over my shoulders here right now. We have Plato and Socrates. And, I read Plato's dialogues a lot, and this dude's smarter than most people that are alive today. I'm just going to be honest. He is. He lived 2,000 years ago, still smarter than a lot of people today. Because we forgot how to critically think about things. And I'm guilty of this too. When I started this podcast, full woo. That's what got me in the door. However, then I'm like, okay, so what does regular science say about these mysteries? What is, this theory about, what's the opposing theory to this, or why couldn't this be the case? I started looking into science. I started looking into philosophy. I really got into philosophy because I feel like epistemology, which means the theory of knowledge, how do we know what we know, is one of the most important things. Where are you getting your information? That is one of the most important things out there. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I was watching the back and forth online between Flint and this Dan guy. And, part of me felt bad for the Dan guy because I feel like kind of Hancock left them high and dry. I don't know. I just, and that's the comment I made on Twitter. It's like that this dude got kind of sucked into this thing, and then Hancock makes no comment, adds no value to the thread back and forth. He's just trying to sell. Oh, by the way, Ancient Apocalypse 2 is coming out soon, so maybe that has something to do with all this. I don't know. But we do have, I don't know. I would like, if Ancient Apocalypse 2 comes out and Hancock says, you know what, I was too hard on archaeologists, or, these are my theories, they might not be accepted, but this is just what I think, something like that. But then when you come so hard and act like you're right and then get smoked in a debate, like a debate that you've called for years, by the way. Now Now he's posting pictures, selfies with him and Zahi Hawass, and he apologized to Zahi Hawass, and people have been talking shit about Zahi Hawass for years. So, like, what do Graham Hancock's top fans think about that? Because that was one of the main rhetoric, one of the main talking points he used to use, which is, oh, see, the head of, the Egyptian archaeology stuff doesn't even want to debate me about this kind of stuff. So now they're friends again or whatever. I would like to know what people think about that. I think that there's so much hypocrisy and so much craziness. And it's tough. This is such a complex situation because of technology. And because of, again, there's a lot of moving parts. Rogan does have a lot to do with this because not as nearly as many people would know about Graham Hancock. Not nearly as many people would know a lot about all these. Like, I wouldn't know anything about Teriology or Terrence Howard if it wasn't for Joe Rogan. So, like, now that there's people online fully believing this guy, does he? Yeah, I guess he can do whatever he wants. It's his show, but I'm just saying, like, maybe have somebody come on and say, hey, or have Neil deGrasse come on because they had some sort of dialogue before. Have them both on, and then have him explain his position on why that's probably not the case. So, but then to call Terrence Howard a genius the 5 next episodes is kind of insane. I thought Joe was a little bit more savvy than that. And I don't think any of these people are idiots. Like, clearly Terrence Howard was passionate about what he was doing. I don't think he's intentionally trying to do anything negative or whatever. I just think that it's kind of like an ego thing. Oh, I created this whole new way to view things in physics and everything like that, but nobody takes me seriously. Well, there's probably a reason for that. And there's a ton of video. People have done tons of videos recently on all this kind of stuff, but again, it's the stuff I see online, the amount of people believing it, liking it. We have some sort of thing going on, and I don't know if it's a symptom from the last 5 years of all the craziness or what, but there's kind of a lot of anti-science rhetoric out there, and maybe some of it's, warranted, but not all scientists are bad people. We've had lots of scientists on the show, and not all scientists don't believe in God, and not all scientists don't believe in metaphysical things. There are scientists. There's a guy, what's his name? I'll think of it. But there's a guy who runs a channel where it's an evolution channel, but he believes in God, but he believes fully in evolution too. Like, you can hold those things personally, but I would, they keep them separate. If you can keep it separate, I think that's a massive thing, and I don't think enough people realize that too. They just think, oh, you're either a scientist and don't believe anything, or you fully believe everything. I think that there's more of a medium there, but it's just frustrating. I don't want to live in a country with a bunch of fucking idiots, and that's why I critique things now. I was one of those idiots, so I'm not speaking, I just happened to spend thousands of hours talking to people, reading books, reading dense books, and having dialogue with people and trying to understand where other people come from, looking at the origins of everything. So again, I'm not pretending like I'm some intelligent guy that knows everything and everybody else is an idiot, because I don't think that that's the case. But I do think that there is some objective truth that we can all agree on. Like science, I think right now is our best tool to quantify the external world around us. And I also think that there's something great about being like personally spiritual or having some sort of personal belief in something higher than yourself. I think those two things don't have to conflict. I think you can have both of those things. I don't know. I think that people are really, really lost right now, and they're looking for something. Religion's kind of fallen away a bit. People are really And you look, some of these people could be trolls that you see, some of, with the comments, some of them could be, people just messing around. I don't know. It's shocking the amount of people that actually think or believe in this stuff. It's kind of crazy. And there are real people. I know some of them could be bots or whatever, but there are some real people that believe this, because I've had back and forth with some of these people. So, if these guys, so like moving on to Billy Carson. So I think while Graham believes in what he's saying, I believe Terrence believes in what he's saying. And I'm not saying Billy Carson doesn't, but look into this guy's past a little bit. I'm not going to give it away for you, but if you go do a little bit of a digging, you might find some things, some interesting things. And that being said, he was on Rogan too, talking about the Sumerian texts and there were aliens and the Anunnaki and blah, 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 blah. Talking about Nibiru. Like, he didn't even know. He claims to have used, I forget which school it is, but one of the schools has a cuneiform translation or text translation, and he claims to have interpreted as, this planet, blah, blah, blah. That's what a lot of people think. Nibiru actually means, and I've looked this up in the past, to pass in front of. So it's like an astral body passing in front of something. Doesn't mean that there's a planet full of aliens ready to come down and, make us mine gold or whatever Sitchin said. Like, so again, Rogan's free to talk to who he wants, but there are people fully believing this stuff. And it's kind of crazy. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe just keep having these conversations, and there's a lot of rhetoric out there. So do we fight the heuristic rhetoric with dialectic, or some sort of, I don't even know, just you keep using Socratic method? But even I feel like Socratic method wouldn't even work today based on the ego of a lot of people. And that's the thing about the internet, is everybody thinks they're right now. Anybody can look anything up, whether it's 10 seconds or 20 minutes, and they think they're an expert. No, it's just Dunning-Kruger run amok. So I don't know. If anybody has a defense of this, I would like to hear the argument of why this is totally normal and totally fine. And, it could be the case where, like, there's been suckers forever. If you want to be a sucker or a mark and fully believe the stuff, it's one thing to, again, Aristotle had the famous quote, it's a sign of intelligence to hold an idea without fully believing it. And I truly believe that too. Like, you should be able to have a dialogue with anybody, but there are people fully believing it. So what's the outlook on that? What's the outlook on somebody fully believing something that's so asinine and a lot of people believing it? I personally think what it's doing is just creating a detour of knowledge. Like, we're just creating this like tangent or detour that's unnecessary. Like, we're not going in a linear line. We're all over the place. And maybe that's just the way it's always been, and maybe that's just the way it'll be. And again, maybe there's just people that will just believe anything regardless, and it's not up to Rogan. It's not up to whoever to figure that out. It's those people to figure it out. I have no idea. I'm just throwing it out there, trying to see what people think about this, because, as I mentioned, it just makes me a little nervous. The world's in a not so great place right now. Maybe if things were better in terms of like stability in the world and economies and things like that, inflation, maybe I would think differently about these things, but it just makes me nervous that, and this kind of has nothing to do with politics, but it kind of does, because the people that are willing to believe anything are willing to believe anything politicians say too. So it's kind of all comes together somewhat. And on Mind Escape, we don't ever talk about politics, but I do think in this context it does matter. But one thing I will say is, So I did a little bit of research. I've been using ChatGPT a lot too, bouncing ideas off ChatGPT, reading stuff online, looking up old books that I have and stuff. And I'm just trying to look like, have there been citizen scientists? Like, who are the people, if Terrence Howard, like hypothetically, if a Terrence Howard had a better theory, or Billy Carson did know how to translate things or whatever, like, who were the people in the past that have actually contributed to things that weren't from academia or science? So I did find, there's not a lot. I will be honest, there's not a lot, but there are some. One guy was William Herschel. He discovered Uranus in 1781, but his background was a musician, composer, and then he became an astronomer. And his discovery, expanded what we knew about our solar system. Gregor Mendel, you might have heard of Mendel in terms of genetics. He's the founder of modern genetics. He was a Augustinian monk. He had no training in science. His experiments kind of laid the groundwork for what we know about genetic traits and inheritance and things like that. So I remember him from Biology 101. That one I kind of did know. This one might sound familiar too. Michael Faraday made contributions to electromagnetism and electrochemistry. His background was he was a bookbinder's apprentice and self-taught in science. And his discoveries, included electromagnetic induction and the laws of electrolysis. So there's somebody that has two people, Mendel and Faraday, who had large contributions to science without any scientific training. Now, there's hundreds of years between some of these people. So they're even, if this was so common, like a Hancock or a Terrence Howard or a, Billy Carson or whatever, we'd be cranking people out left and right. Oh, this new theory, we're moving things along. That's not the case. None of these people can offer any sort of evidence that would be tangible to showing somebody or having a lay person understand what they're saying. Mary Anning discovered Jurassic marine fossils, including the Ichthyosaurus and the Plesiosaurus. It says Anning was a fossil collector and dealer from England, who had no formal education in geology and paleontology. So, again, these people exist, but they're few and far between, and they still kind of have ties to science or have a techne or some expertise that's kind of relative to what they've discovered. Henrietta Swan Leavitt, discovered the relationship between luminosity and the period of Cepheid, variable stars, which become crucial for measuring cosmic distances. It says Leavitt worked as a computer, so maybe she just calculated stuff at Harvard College Observatory. So it had this person had a degree in astronomy. So again, this person had a degree in what they were talking about. Joseph Priestley discovered oxygen and several other gases contributing significantly to the field of chemistry. Priestley was a theologian and an educator with a keen interest in natural philosophy and chemistry. Again, for anybody that doesn't know, I've been working on a free philosophy course to help people navigate these topics. I will be announcing the name soon. I do kind of almost have the first episode done. It's going to be a little bit more structured and more of a lesson style, if you will. And again, I'll make like a playlist on my channel. I'll try and upload it to the audio platforms as well. And so that'll be free. And then I'll also on my Patreon be offering kind of insider knowledge of these pseudoscientists and a lot of people. I've been lucky of the people that I've had on have been super cool and actually have something to offer. But there's a lot of people that I've either not had on the show or tried not or, have turned down or whatever that maybe are a little bit out there. There's also a lot of snake oil salesmen and grifters. And again, I'm not trying to take anybody down, but I will be applying philosophy to the stuff, in their books and their ideas and things like that. So, it'll be a guide to how to interact with these mysteries. So I'll be offering at some point. That's not coming as soon as the free philosophy course. So, let's see here. In the philosophy course, we'll start with the history of philosophy and the pre-Socratics. That's why, I mentioned natural philosophy. That's where we get science. The pre-Socratics were known as the Ionian natural philosophers, and they eventually evolved into what we know as scientists. Caroline Herschel, this is the first dude. William Herschel's sister, discovered several comets and contributed to her brother William's astronomical work. She was his assistant, housekeeper, and she became an accomplished astronomer on her own. Thomas Bayes, you might know this guy from Bayesian probability stuff. Formulated Bayes' theorem, a fundamental theorem in probability theory and statistics. Bayes was a Presbyterian minister and mathematician, primarily working outside of academia. And then I have one more person here, Rosalind Franklin. Contributed crucially to the understanding of molecular structures of DNA, RNA, viruses, coal, and graphite. Franklin's background was a physical chemist who worked extensively in X-ray crystallography, yet her critical contributions to DNA structure were initially overlooked. So that's somebody that, had something to offer, was overlooked. It happens. But I don't think 10 people on the Joe Rogan Experience in a row are going to be all these people that change the paradigm of what we're experiencing. So, again, it comes down to, what do you have to offer? Because I've seen and I've talked to people that are studying fringe things or out there things that do have data or do have something to offer. And I'm just confused when I see somebody like a Terrence Howard. Everybody's like, oh, he's a genius. Oh, my God. Oh, and then Rogan's repeating it. And now everybody's talking about it. I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can enlighten me. Maybe not. I don't know. And the 1 × 1 = 2 thing is it's just crazy to me. I feel like my 3-year-old son understands that concept pretty well at this point himself. So, let's see here. And by the way, I will be live tomorrow night as well. It's been a long time since I've done back-to-back. I will have a guest, though. I'm having friend of the show and author Matthew Palomarian. We're going to be talking psychedelics, shamanism, all that wonderful jazz. Matthew's a great guy, good author. Check out his books. And it's always a pleasure having him on. But again, this is something that, this topic, it just, maybe I'm hard on myself because I once, believed in Graham Hancock's stuff and maybe even defended him in certain areas and things like that. I'm not against having fun or speculating or anything like that. I'm just, when you start debating people in a public forum and claiming you're right and this person's wrong, or calling people cons and say, it becomes crazy. Like, then we really should be doing deeper dives into stuff, into people's backgrounds, into people's intentions and things like that. It's just heuristic rhetoric run amok. I keep using that because not enough people. Heuristic rhetoric is when somebody uses rhetoric to win an argument, without the aim of truth, meaning that they'll say or do whatever they have to win the argument as long as they win, and they don't really care if it pertains to objective truth. If that makes sense. And that's where we're at. That's like the whole that's like the whole internet right now, right? So I didn't want to do this too long, so I'm kind of wrap it up here. But again, it just seems like after that debate, Rogan's like, and I made this post too, is he's like, hold my beer. And then he has all the craziest people on after to discuss this. So people like it. I was trying to get Maurice to come on. He doesn't believe this stuff necessarily, but he likes listening to it. So I do understand that there are people that like listening, or maybe it's just interesting the way this person thinks or whatever, whether it's true or not. I don't know, like how people perceive that, but I don't like wasting my time with bullshit. So if somebody's completely wrong or full of shit, why would I waste my time with that, and I hope Ancient Apocalypse Part 2 is maybe he puts out a statement or changes his rhetoric, his anti-science, anti-archaeologist rhetoric, and comes back and apologizes. I have no idea. I don't think that that's the case, though, especially based on the fact that he just tweeted at Flint calling him a con using somebody else's video. So, and I'll add that thread. I'll add the X thread with that back and forth in the info below. I'll also add that Neil deGrasse Tyson video where he describes the whole Terrence Howard thing and the notes that he gave him and his explanation of that. And he seemed very nice about it. He wasn't like, oh, screw this guy, he called me out, blah, blah. It was like a very nice video, like, hey, this is just what happened. I'm sorry that he feels that way, but there is like a reality to science and observation. Yeah. And I don't know, the Billy Carson thing, I have no defense for that. Look into his background. That's all I'll say. And that's it. I'm going to keep this one short. As I mentioned, I will be live again tomorrow night with guest Matthew Palomari. We'll be discussing shamanism, psychedelics, all that kind of stuff. So, and that's it. But if you're interested in supporting Mindscape or this kind of shift that we're on, again, I know I'm going to turn some people off that got into this podcast because of the woo. Completely fine. I understand. I'm not out here trying to. I'm just being honest. I'm not trying out here to waste anybody's time or pretend like this is something that it's not or anything like that. So totally sorry if you got into it for other reasons and now I'm not saying or doing the things you like. It makes sense to me. So, but this is just the shift in the evolution of the show. And again, I'll be creating this free philosophy. It'll almost be like a podcast within a podcast. And I'm going to have another name for it. And I'll announce that soon, but, look for that. First episode will be on the history of philosophy and the pre-Socratics. And then eventually I'll get to the Patreon. I'll get to the Patreon thing that I'll be doing where I'll apply philosophy to a lot of these fringe and pseudo scientist stuff and see what's what. If somebody seems disingenuous, maybe call them out, kind of a thing. So, and that's it. You want to support Mindscape, click the LinkTree link down below. We've got merch store, we've got Patreon, check out our documentary, As Within, So Without, From UFOs to DMT. Kind of a unique look at a couple different modern phenomena, or ancient, I guess how you look at it. But, and that's it. I love everybody. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you tomorrow night. Peace.